can't speak. One last time. Tea will help. Hey ho, I'm Rachel, this is Missy and we're Miss Daisy Sewing, and today we're going to talk about cross stitches. I thought it would be really fun to show you guys how I prep a project, particularly when the intention for said project is to go travelling with me. Now, I have a holiday coming up, and when I go on holiday I like to take a cross stitch with me, just so that I've got something to do when I'm on the plane, sitting about the airport, if we've got a lot of travelling, or if we're sort of stuck in for a quiet evening in the hotel room and we just want some peace and quiet. So, without further ado, the plan for said cross stitch is to use the Pokemon cross stitch by Diaz, and we're going back old school by doing our classic starter Pokemon. So we're going to do Squirtle, Bulbasaur, and Charmander. Now, I have no intention of doing all of this whilst I'm on holiday, but I quite like to have a couple of projects sort of set up ready to go, particularly as I'm just about to finish off quite a big project and don't really have much else apart from my journal, which we'll talk about another time, to really work on. So, without further ado, let's just get set up, shall we? Here I've got two boxes, and these are, this one as well. These are all of my threads that I know the DMC number for, and they're all organised by number numerically in these little poly pockets. It's overkill, yes, but it's how I like to work. In addition to that, I keep all of my sort of scraps that come from like kits and stuff organised by colour on little random bits of cards. So that's a blue one, got an orange one here. I've got a bunch of green ones. Apparently I do a lot with green. And what I like to do is take the pattern, make a note of all the numbers for what I need, try and find if I've got the proper thread, and if I don't, I'll sub it in for one of these random ones. Looking at all of this, I've noticed I don't have a lot of blue, so I'm hopeful, fingers are crossed for poor Squirtle, because that's probably the one colour I'm lacking with. I've got tons of reds and greens, but not a lot of blue, so I'll get prepping and fingers crossed we've got everything we need. I've sped this up because it's probably the most time consuming part of the whole project. As you can see, I've got little bits of card with some holes punched into it, and on this I'm noting down the DMC numbers for each of the individual projects. I'm also looking to see if any of the colours are actually used in more than one of the Pokemon, and in this case there was quite a few colours. From there it was just a case of matching the numbers up. So if I had the correct thread, that was nice and easy, and if not, I then checked online for the nearest colour match, and if that failed, it was looking through all of the random odds and ends of thread that I had to see if there was something that looked about right. So it's hard to see, but the pattern here, it's saying the design size is 5.5 by 5.5, which means it's going to fit inside a 6-inch hoop. Got here some bits of scrap Aida, and what I'm going to do is cut probably 8 inches just to give me a bit of wiggle room should I decide to go for a bigger hoop. So that's actually 9.5. You know, I'm not going to fret about a tiny bit of scrap, so let's go for the 8. Oh, yeah, let's just keep it nice and easy, and we will cut across that way. So I've got here my Aidas, and then I've got over here some fabrics. So this one is a bought fabric, that's just how it came. This one I played about with the fabric paints, and I mixed the blue in a ton of water and I sort of dipped it in and scrunched it to give this sort of slightly mottled look. This is a pale blue, it doesn't show up very well on camera. And then this green here, I dabbled with a lighter green and splatted some pinks on. From here the plan is quite simple. I'm going to trim down some of that fabric to match the same size as my different pieces of canvas. My biggest pro tip here is masking tape. I use it on all of my different cross-stitch projects, regardless of whether I'm using a fabric as well. It helps stop the Aida and the fabric in this case fraying, and it also doesn't leave a sticky residue when you take it off at the end of the project. Now those of you who've done cross stitches with a fabric as well might be looking at this going, why are you using the wrong side of the fabric against the Aida? I actually like to stitch my cross stitches with the fabric on top because I think you get a neater finish, the stitches don't look puffy, and because the Aida's on the bottom and therefore doesn't need removed, not only is the fabric itself stronger, it also means I don't risk damaging the actual final piece by pulling out the Aida threads. I'll go into detail later on in this project about how that looks when you're actually stitching it. This here is a tablet case I picked up really cheap on clearance. It's got loads of pockets, which is lovely. You can see I've already got in here some embroidery needles. Got our fabric here, so the work in progress will just stay on its hoop in here, and the other pieces will go, let's start one. These two I'm just going to leave in here, hold them in there. We'll pop this in its hoop, ready to go. Got our book, and then all of our threads. So we're going to start with our Charmander. So I'm going to leave my Charmander threads to the top, and these ones I'm just going to tuck in out the way in the back here. Now I'm going to pack some scissors in my travel case, but for the plain I'm going to have some nail clips. So that's not considered an open blade, but it's sharp enough it will trim my cross stitch threads. This will go in my luggage, I'll pop them in there once we've got off the plane. And then this should all zip up nice and neat. I've got to squash the book a little bit, but that's okay. So that's all nice and neat and isn't intrusive at all. So that's 3 sewing projects in there, ready to go for holiday. Hey all, I thought I'd give you all a quick update on where we've got with the cross stitches. I did manage all of my Charmander whilst on holiday. Finland has quite a lot of late starts, like nothing opens till like 10, 11 o'clock. And being a natural early bird, we would be up at like 7 having had our breakfast. So I did get quite a lot done, which was quite nice. It's actually what we needed in a holiday, to be honest. We've been burning the candle a little bit at both ends. So I got my Charmander done, and I did get a good start on my Bulbasaur. We had to go home a little bit via Aberdeen to go and fetch Missy from the in-laws, so I also got a really good dent done there before finishing that off sort of this week. Because these projects are just big block colours, they stitch really quickly, which is exactly what I've kind of needed in terms of a project. My current cross stitch has loads of confetti stitching, and it will absolutely pay off. It's going to look beautiful when it's done, but I just needed something quick and easy. I wanted a quick wing cross stitch, and these have been perfect for that. My next one obviously is Squirtle, so I thought it would be quite fun to take you guys through how to set up and start a cross stitch with this sort of fabric front. As always with these things, it's what works for me, might not work for you guys, but this channel is all about trying to share hints and tips with each other. So if you've got any hints, please let me know, and I'll let you guys know what works for me. So let's get to it. So this is the fabric side, and the Aida is on this side. I've marked across for the middle, And then what we're going to do is find the middle of the pattern, which is in the belly here, and then count to the side. So I've already checked and it's 19 this way. So on here, that'll be 19 that way, meaning we count 19 this way. One stitch. The key thing to note here is as we are going through the Aida, we want this as perfectly straight as possible. The first row is a little difficult because we don't have anything to guide us. Like I said, we're using the Aida on the back to keep us right for those spacing for the crosses. You will just sort of fall into a rhythm with it. And just take your time and aim to keep everything neat. It's not going to be perfect, the first row, so don't fret too much. Once it's all stitched together, it all sort of becomes one, and no one's going to notice if one of your stitches is a little bit smaller or a bit wider in the middle. So I think that's this row. So I'm just going to quickly double check by counting my stitches. So it should be 9, 10, 9, which is 28. I'll quickly count them. Easier to count on the front. 27, so we'll do one more stitch. And the return back is always much easier because, as you can see, I now have all of my points. My corners are already defined, so I don't need to look quite so hard when it's getting my position. I can just sort of go with vibes a little bit more. One of the ways to avoid knots is to keep to shorter lengths of thread, but there's that meme that went round in the sort of embroidery and cross stitch community with this sort of Freddie Mercury, and that's absolutely me. I will use the longest piece of thread I can get away with, mostly because I find changing threads really quite time consuming. It's just quicker and easier, and I can just push on with big blocks of colour if I've got a longer thread. So my cross stitch etiquette isn't exactly on point, I suppose. A couple of cardinal rules to keep your cross stitch neat is to always do your stitches the same way. So you can see here my stitches go from top left, bottom right, and then top right to bottom left. So my top stitch will always be that top right, bottom left. And when the light hits it, it looks neater and smoother, and it's just a really easy way to get a much more professional finish on your cross stitch, is to just make sure your stitches always go the same way. There is no hard and fast rule about what's the correct direction, and having looked at previous projects I've done, I will alternate. So some of my projects I do top right to bottom left, and some of my projects go top left, bottom right. Clearly it's just depending on the mood I am when I started the project. But as long as it's consistent, nobody cares and it doesn't matter. So we're nearly done this row. Yep, got another little knot. see a lot of these. This is quite a tangly thread, this one. There we are. If you're using the knockoff DMCs, they're a bit prone to tangling, but DMC thread can be expensive, so you gotta do what you gotta do. No judgment. So we've just done this row here in the middle, and I'm going to do the row above. So you can see it's one stitch shorter on the left and one stitch shorter on the right. Now when I'm doing the fabric on the front, I prefer to start my stitches on the back. So I have the Aida to keep me right, so we're going one stitch shorter, which would be there. Again, trying to keep it as perpendicular as we can, which then means to get rid of the knot. This is very tangly thread, guys. I apologise. Never look at the back of my work, guys. It's atrocious. So, as I was saying, I prefer when I've got the fabric to be coming up through the back, using the Aida as a guide. And then on the front, because I have this row below it, I know exactly where it's going to go back in, and I can immediately line up these stitches nice and neat. And I'm using this row to build the row above. It's a little bit quicker. And for me, I find it the easiest way to do it. If I was to go the row below, from the back, I would be coming through this row, and then I would be having to try and position coming back through to the Aida, which is perfectly doable. It's how we built the foundation row, but this for me is just faster, and I'm guaranteed a slightly neater finish. And apart from that, we just continue as normal. So that's my sort of startup guide, and a couple little hints and tips for along the way. Most of it being just run with vibes. Don't fret too much. Keep your stitches the right way. Go with vibes. Who cares about the back? And just enjoy the process. So I'm going to push on with this a little bit longer, and then I will catch up with you hopefully when Squirtle's done. One last hint and tip whilst I'm thinking about it is always build from a foundation row, like what I'm doing here. You can see like his mouth is quite a bit up the ways. I wouldn't jump up and go on board of this, let's do the mouth. Because I've not pinned this fabric to the Aida, it will shift slightly. So by doing this, it will be nice and neat, and I'm not going to get any bumps in the middle of the artwork. So always build from the foundation row, and don't jump parts of the pattern. There we go. That's my last bit of advice. So yeah, I'll see you when Squirtle's done. I am so happy with how these have turned out. My next step is going to be to press all of these, and then I'm going to add some embellishments, and I'm also going to have a quick chat about hoops with you all. So the plan is to embellish these a little bit. I'm going to put some gold thread around his tail, and I want to put wee scattering of beads as well, just to help add a little bit of a sparkle to him. And I'm going to do something slightly similar with Squirtle here, and put some little filigree type beads around to sort of mimic bubbles. Bulbasaur is going to get something totally different, and you'll have to wait and see what that is when I get there. I once heard metallic threads described as the devil's pubes, and honestly, I can't think of a better description for them. You need to keep the strands short, otherwise they will tangle, and even at that, they will do everything in their power to fight against you. So I always keep any metallic embellishments to a minimum. Beads are one of the easiest ways to add a splash of sparkle to a project. Just make sure your needle is skinny enough that it's going to fit through your bead, and then pop them in wherever you like. Just use long, nice jump stitches on the back to keep everything in place. I repeated the same process with the Squirtle, but using these sort of bead caps, these little silver bead caps that made me think of bubbles, And after that, I was really happy with how these came together. And now onto the hoops. For the first hoop, I decided to paint it with a green acrylic. And the key thing here is to just do it in stages, because otherwise it's going to stick to the paper and things, and you don't want that. The next technique is to wrap the hoop. Here I'm using some embroidery floss, but you could use some wool or something like that as well. It does use a lot of thread, which is something to bear in mind, and periodically you can see I'm putting a small dot of glue along the outside edge of the hoop, just to hold it all neatly in place. I reused the same technique with a ribbon for the last hoop, and whilst it's very similar, you do have to bear in mind the broader the ribbon, the less smooth an edge you're going to get on that, just because obviously they don't bend as neatly as the thread does. I always love how much it elevates the hoop, just doing a little something to it, despite it being so simple. And now it's time to get these finished. The first thing is to get them in the hoop, and then it's to remove the masking tape. I do a long gathering stitch around the edging and pull that tight so that all of that spare Aedan fabric is tucked into the back. I find felt's a really good backing material, and I use the inner hoop as my template to get that cut to size before using a blanket stitch around the edging just to secure it all in place. And lastly, Bulbasaur got his glow up. For this, I just trimmed off the heads of the flowers from this little bunch that I picked up and simply hot glued them down directly onto the hoop. I absolutely love how these turned out. Even though each of them looks different, they still collectively make a perfect set, and I love that. So tell me, who's your favourite starter Pokemon? And until next time, cheerio!